Hey, my name is Taryn Burns. My group members were LaShandra, Hattie, and Eloisae. Our P.o.P taught about stress in students and the effects and how to combat that stress.
All right, so what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about who experiences stress, what interventions can be done, why students experience stress, and how it affects their academic success.
Okay, so in our research, we found that stress affects students of all races, nationalities, and at all levels. And as educators, we can't go on pretending that this problem doesn't exist. So we're going to talk about some simple interventions that we can include in our classrooms.
All right, because all of us teach such different classes, I teach high school, everyone else teaches in the elementary school. I was afraid that our sources would be all over the place and we would not have common themes. However, as you can see, we do have common themes across the board. We found one of our common themes to be interventions, teacher and student burnout, all the fact that all grade levels experience stress, positive relationships usually help with students dealing with that stress, and then the effects of stress on academic performance. One of the interesting outliers that we saw was the idea that the stress is caused not by education or the educational system, but by technology and parental involvement.
All right, and as we've already mentioned, all students experience stress. A lot of people think majority high school and maybe college students, but elementary students and middle are also experiencing it. An article I found, the students completed a self-report. They reported stress as a result of frustration to everyday learning, as well as conflicts with their peers. In the elementary article, discussed that stress has been overlooked in elementary students, and educators and parents can support the students by being more attentive, validating their feelings, and guiding students to cope with their stressors. Then for middle school, the transition to middle school is what causes the stress on students because there's so many changes that are happening. And that's kind of the same with the upper secondary and college. All of the challenges and changes that are happening are causing the stress in the students. And for middle school specifically, their friend groups are changing and maybe even breaking up. So their bodies are changing, all the hormones. So just them going through lots of different changes and teachers being able to help them cope with the stressors would be helpful. And LaShandra is going to talk more about the interventions and coping mechanisms we can use to help them.
So now that we know that there is a problem with our students experiencing stress, the first thing we need to do is be able to recognize the different stressors in students, regardless of the grade level. Next, there's a couple interventions that we're going to kind of focus on, which are psychological interventions, physiological interventions, and environmental or physical intervention factors that can assist. Finally, we want to talk about the education of teachers as an intervention, making sure that we are educated enough and do professional learning to know how to identify stress and what interventions that can be done. Next slide.
All right, one of the things we found is that students are burned out. And from the research, it's evident that we, educators, the educational system, need to change. These things are happening because of over testing, too much too soon in kindergarten and first grade. They're not able to be kids. We're focusing more on standards and less on becoming human beings who are confident in our abilities. It's creating students who are exhausted and cynical because they don't believe in themselves. One thing we can do is build positive relationships between student and teacher, and Hattie's going to tell us more about that.
Okay, so you have to start building that relationship the first day of school. As the students come in, you need to make sure that they know that you are there for them, that they have a relationship with you, and that they know that if there is something going on, that you are going to be there for them, making them feel like they belong in your classroom. And if there's a situation where they are getting stressed, that you're going to be the calm one in that situation, that you're going to stay there and listen to them and be willing to help them. And next, Taryn's going to talk about the effects on academic performance.
So a lot of the research we found, the higher the stress level, the lower the academic achievement. So results of one study indicated that students who experience greater stress regarding middle school transition are at an increased risk for experiencing low academic performance, specifically increased test and performance anxiety. Um, So, as I mentioned, the higher stress and the lower academic achievement, that article also mentioned that students who are less aware of their expectations were more stressed. And the study also found that stress hinders student ability to study efficiently and kind of manage their time well. However, there was one outlier. This study indicated the insignificance in high stress levels in academic performance because it tested student stress levels before they took a high stakes test. And then the results showed that students who were highly stressed actually performed well on their test. So the theory that high stress levels negatively impacts academic performance didn't prove true there.
All right, so we talked about there's some applications that we can use in our classrooms. We can change the physical environment just by simply adding a plant or allowing the students to stand in the classroom.
And then one study found that student led stress management activities help to improve and reduce student stress. So they did things like meditation, yoga, and those type of things. And in the end, the majority of the students said that the techniques they learned helped them personally.
All right. Also, there's some psychological and physiological applications that are listing here. As far as breathing, research showed that after a slow-paced breathing intervention, a group of 14 adolescents actually demonstrated improved stress management. Again, here's the powerful of yet and social emotional learning can assist. Next slide.
All right, and the first thing we need to do is make sure that educators are trained. We need to figure out what we don't know, how we can train, how can we train educators if we aren't even sure what we need to be trained on. I think that more research in the schools and the counties and the states need to be done. There was a research that showed supported education intervention, and basically to make this successful, teachers needed time, the attitude, mastery, and an environment that was conducive to this type of training.
So some of the first grade implications, like I said, we have them listed for here for first grade: social emotional learning, Go Noodle, flexible seating, Peace Corner. For third grade, we have Taryn.
So zones of regulations that you can tell kids to talk or walk, make sure they're seen, heard, and loved, and use humor or touch as appropriate.
And then for fifth grade, morning meetings and wellness Wednesdays, kind of just focusing on the overall body, mind, and soul, teaching students how to cope with and manage their feelings. And so that we can help them with their stressors, teaching them things like stretching and just talking about their feelings.
And in high school, the biggest thing you can do, because there's so many of them, is just to make sure you form a positive teacher-student relationship. You help them have a growth mindset, let them understand that you don't have to be perfect and it's okay to fail. And then the last thing is the positive mental attitude. There's a QR code for a lesson I do sometimes with my students. Just teach them how to cope with what's in front of them.
All right, so we've understand through our research that students are going to experience stress. So there's three key things we want to do. Make sure that educators are educated and receive professional learning on how to deal with stress and identify stress. Number two, know the correct interventions to be able to help the students. And number three, implement the proper interventions. Thank you. Next slide. So here's our reference and our contact information if you have any questions or would like to look up any research for yourself. Thank you for watching our presentation.
Thanks.
Thank you.